In this episode, Golden and I discuss the Book of Boba Fett. Full speed ahead.
The Omega Beam. Full power. The Omega Beam.
Welcome to the Omega Beam number 161. I'm your host, Oren Merton. If you pay attention to the Star Wars franchise, you know that the second Disney Plus Star Wars series, The Book of Boba Fett, is now streaming in its entirety on Disney Plus. It follows directly after the events of The Mandalorian Season 2. As with many of our TV discussions, we start spoiler-free for the first few minutes and then dive deep. So here we go.
This is Golden, and I'm here with Oren to talk about The Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, the first spin-off from The Mandalorian, though certainly not the last.
I would say instead of a spin-off, a branch.
A branch. That's a good word.
I think it's more of a branch.
Yeah. So Boba Fett was introduced very briefly in the first season. We just kind of saw a boot, I think, finding Fennec Shan dying on the sand of Tatooine. And he played a significant part in the season 2 of The Mandalorian. And then this was supposed to be his 7-episode story of how he becomes the daimyo, is that the word? Daimyo of Mos Espa in Tatooine. Basically the big crime lord there. So I was extremely excited about the Book of Boba because, like so many, he was introduced in Empire and just seemed so cool. He had the best suit of armor. He was the bounty hunter who got Han. He was just a really intriguing, mysterious character, and they kind of just dumped him like a chump into the Sarlacc pit early on in the next movie, Return of the Jedi. And then we never heard of him again. So I was very interested to hear and to see what they would do with him. And I think they really did him well in The Mandalorian Season 2. He was really an intriguing character and a powerful character.
Yeah. I think that he was always an intriguing character because you didn't really know very much about him.
Right. In the movies, you never saw him without his helmet.
Yeah. And then I don't know if the prequels really took away from that or added to it.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly saw him without his helmet, and we knew he was a clone. And for those who watched the animated series, The Clone Wars, we got to see him as kind of a nasty, badass kid, and that was part of his backstory and all this stuff. And he's still mysterious because, you know, that's what he is as a kid, but that we don't necessarily see what he turns into. And this was his big story. This was his time to shine. And overall, I liked it. But I think The Mandalorian set an incredibly high bar, and the Book of Boba Fett kind of seemed like The Mandalorian 2.5 in that, I'm trying to think of how to say things without spoilers early on. It does further Boba Fett's story, certainly. If you want to know what happens to Boba, I mean, you see at the end of Mandalorian Season 2, he's taken over Jabba's palace, and if you want to see what happens, this is definitely where you get to find that out. But as much as it moves Boba's story, I think it's almost just as much about moving Mando's story.
It's just telling a story.
Yeah.
It's just telling a story. I think that I really enjoyed the first couple episodes, and then it kind of slowed down, and then it picked back up with the last couple episodes.
Yeah. All of these...
and I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, those last couple episodes, those are the best of episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, because there was very little Boba Fett. And it's just, it's a slow story. It's not the action-packed series that I think a lot of people are expecting from the character Boba Fett.
Yeah. Before we go into spoilers, I'll say two things which really resonated with me when I heard other people say them. The first is science fiction writer John Scalzi was talking about how at first he was having a little trouble kind of reconciling his idea of the mysterious sort of evil Boba Fett from the movies with this new Boba Fett who's less evil and more just sort of driven. And he said his in was once he realized that this wasn't about, a villain so much as an anti-hero. I think as he put it, your dad with a troubled past, he really got into it. And I agree with that. I think it helps. I mean, this is not a dark villain who gets his time in the sun. And the other thing is Mark Bernardin on Fat Man Beyond was talking about his thoughts, and he was saying that he wished this series was actually more of this. But if you think of as less of 7 episodes just of a brand new story of Boba Fett, but you think of it as an anthology series of Mando and friends, it begins to make a little bit more sense in the big context of Mandalorian season 1 and 2, and now the Book of Boba Fett. So if you haven't seen it, but you're curious, you will enjoy this. Like Golden said, I mean, it's very well done. It has its slow moments, but you'll get into it. If this is going to be your first entry into the Disney Plus Favreauverse, I highly recommend you start with The Mandalorian season 1, because then, first of all, then you'll be getting the whole story. But second of all, I think The Mandalorian is still the stronger into the Disney Plus Star Wars Favreauverse, if you will, and Filoniverse. So 3, 2, 1. Going into spoilers. I was surprised that this show took almost the last third of it to move Mando's story. It's almost as if we leave Grogu at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. They wanted Grogu in episode 1, season 3 of The Mandalorian, so they kind of shoved this into it. I loved it because I love Mando and I love...
Well, okay, let's think of it this way. This is all The Mandalorian.
Yeah, this is.
This is just the chapter that is the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, a lot of people...
I mean, like I said, it's a branch.
Yeah.
This is not necessarily to tell all about Boba Fett and to have that be the main driver, per se. I don't like, well, kind of is, but it's more about using Boba Fett to just, like you said, carry on the Mandalorian story.
Yeah, and a lot of people online were criticizing this, calling the Book of Boba Fett The Mandalorian Season 2.5, which it kind of was, but that's not a bad thing, because The Mandalorian itself is so good. Having more Mandalorian is never a bad thing. I know that some criticisms online about the Book of Boba Fett were that Boba Fett's motivations were never completely clear as to why he wanted to be a crime lord of all things.
Clearly that he wants to be a crime lord. I think he wants to have a home.
Yeah.
And he wants to have people to care for and a place.
Yeah, I think it is made pretty clear that after he leaves the Sarlacc pit, he finds, in a sense, a family that he never had in the Sand People. And then when the Sand People family no longer exists, he goes out in search of another. And he decides ultimately, as he says in the finale, these are his people. That it's not about crime. It's about being the patriarch of a family. And that's what he wants. To the point that one of the things I've seen online criticisms for is in that finale, Jabba the Hutt, he made most of his money on the spice trade. So that's where the big crime money is from. And yet in the finale, the people that work for Boba, the mods, who I think are absolutely awesome, and I know some people had problems with them, but they need to just get with the program. They were just incredibly fun and incredibly capable.
It kind of felt out of place.
They were colorful. In a gray, sandy show, they were very colorful.
It felt like we put through a contemporary art in Old Western.
Well, they were based on sort of the Who Quadrophenia mods, but hence they were called mods for modifieds, but at the same time, it was also mods because that's what the British mod movement was in the 60s. And they were riding, Vespa-like scooters, but it was fun. I thought I thought they were fun characters. I thought they were useful and good characters and capable characters with agency. But I also thought that if you were young in a sandy, tan world, you probably would want color to stand out and rebel. That's how you would rebel.
I mean, you talk about something that is in the right place is Timothy Oliphant.
Oh, yeah. He's the guy.
Cobb Vanth, I mean, he did from, Deadwood to Justified, and he plays that character well.
Yeah, now he's just another Western sheriff, but this time, he's got a laser instead of just a six-shooter. But, yeah, I mean, I thought when the mods basically say, we can't run Spice, it's destroying the people, I mean, without even batting an eye, Boba says, yeah, okay, the people of Freetown, they want Spice gone. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'll just eliminate, Jabba's number one source of income. That's fine. Now, it's not explicit, but I think it's pretty clear when he talks to Fennec early on and talks about credits and money. He probably earned a pretty penny as a bounty hunter. So when he talks about having credits, I'm sure his bank account can certainly survive for more than a little while without a major source of income like the spice trade. So he's not worried about money. And I didn't think, some people were criticizing that. Where's he going to get his money? I'm sure he's got enough money to figure out what the next move is. That's not the issue. But it is clear that he isn't, like you said, he's not about the crime. He's about the family. And ultimately
at this point, because, I mean, he had his father at one point, but that's really the only family he's ever had. And then I think we haven't finished the animated, but he kind of, with a pseudo family, not really.
Right. In the Clone Wars, he ends up with kind of a gang.
Yeah.
And then I think he's in Rebels too. I never finished Rebels. And of course, then since then, there's the Bad Batch, which we haven't started at all. But yeah, I mean, he's clearly looking, and that is one of the things
it also could be something that he didn't know that he really wanted until what happened with the Tusken Raiders.
Right.
And I very much like that in the end, it came back to not using the weapons that he came into it with, but using the weapon that he came out of it with.
Right. And speaking of weapons, one of the things that Jon Favreau does so incredibly well and has in The Mandalorian and he does in the Book of Boba Fett is he knows what the people want and he gives it to them, not necessarily in the way they were expecting it, but in a way he knows will make them cheer. So in an early episode of the Book of Boba Fett, we are introduced to the Rancor. And he says, I want to ride it. And so at that moment, it became very clear that at some point, we are going to see Boba Fett riding a Rancor, probably in the nick of time. That said, the way that he shows up with this Rancor, breaking all hell loose, and then the Rancor kind of getting spooked and they have to deal with it, that wasn't the way I was expecting to see it. And it was amazing. It was just absolutely fantastic. And of course, it goes without saying, the effects are spectacular and the filming is spectacular. The music isn't quite up to the level of The Mandalorian because, they have Ludwig Göransson doing the music for The Mandalorian. He's one of the best scorers out there right now. And they use some of his themes in the Book of Boba Fett. And they have someone else who does a fine job of stringing them all together and getting the emotion. But you're not going to walk away from the Book of Boba Fett remembering any specific music from any specific episode.
Except for when the Mandalorian shows up and you hear the Mandalorian.
Right, except for when you hear Ludwig's themes. And then you're like, right, gotcha. It's still so fun. And every week I looked forward to the new episodes coming out. And now that it's all streaming, and there's only 7 episodes, so it's not a huge investment of time. If you like space western, this is space western.
That's sci-fi western.
Sci-fi western, yeah. If you like sci-fi western, this is sci-fi western as in top form.
Yeah, I think it's a very enjoyable show. You just need to know going into it not to expect what you've seen from The Mandalorian or from any of the other like Marvel shows in terms of its pace.
Right.
It's here to tell a story.
It is.
It's just enjoy the story, enjoy how beautiful it is, in terms of watching and the fun characters.
Yeah, speaking of fun characters and the effects. So in season 2 of The Mandalorian, spoilers for The Mandalorian season 2, for those who haven't seen it, we get to see digitally de-aged Mark Hamill and another actor playing Luke Skywalker. Well, for those who aren't following the YouTubes regularly, it looked fine. It did the job. But
you said that for this one they hired.
There was a guy.
There was a guy that was really good at deep fakes, so he went through and redid it or showed them what they could have done.
Exactly.
And so they hired him for these episodes.
Exactly. Like a few, was it days or weeks? I don't remember precisely.
I'm just disappointed that they couldn't actually have someone voice the character.
Yeah.
And using a digital voice, which just sounded completely off to me the entire time.
Yeah, they grabbed phrases from his other movies and radio plays of Luke Skywalker talking, which made it, very authentic, quote unquote, Luke Skywalker from the era voice. But of course, it didn't have the emotion that the scene had because each of those lines was recorded for something different. But visually, it was stunning because, they took the guy who did the better Luke Skywalker deep fake. They hired him to do it. And it showed. It was fantastic. So, we have really reached the point where you can do that. But yeah, I wish they'd gotten the voice better. But you know what? This was their second time out. And they had, first time, the visuals were efficient, but not amazing. This time they were amazing. Maybe the third time out, we'll have amazing visuals and amazing voice.
So that's interesting. I'm looking at IMDb, some of the cast. So Chris Bartlett, who played the droid server, is actually someone that Disney has used as C-3PO since 2006.
Oh.
So.
How about that?
So he's used to being a droid, I guess, voicing droids.
Yeah, I did think it was nice that they got the voice actor who in Clone Wars and I think in Rebel also voices Cad Bane. And I thought it was nice they got him to voice Cad Bane, even though they got another actor in the makeup, in the part, etc. I thought it was nice they had him voice the part to kind of give even more continuity to Dave Filoni's Star Wars creations, which are absolutely amazing, and it's incredibly wonderful to see them in live action.
We didn't really touch on this, and we just want to make sure to say Ming-Na Wen as Fennec Shan
she's so amazing, so wonderful.
Just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, she handles both the physical, the emotional. The character is incredibly well written. Just fantastic.
I don't think that the Book of Boba Fett would have been as flushed out or as interesting without her standing on his right.
Absolutely. And I think it also really helps sell the whole family story because in a way, her story is very, very parallel, that she's a bounty hunter. She has no one. But in Boba, she finds someone who believes in her and gives her loyalty because he understands what she has been through.
Yes.
And it gives a depth to both characters to have her there. And, like you said, Ming-Na Wen is just so good. So, yeah, she's absolutely worth watching. And it's great to see her. It was great to see her in The Mandalorian. It's great to see her in the Book of Boba Fett. And certainly the Book of Boba Fett has left me more excited for season 3 of The Mandalorian, which I think is supposed to come out at the end of 2022. So we have most of a year before the next thing. Although I believe the next Star Wars series is Kenobi, I think it's called, with Ewan McGregor reprising his role as Obi-Wan Kenobi. So more Tatooine. I don't know if any of the other characters from The Mandalorian show up in it, but certainly the planet of Tatooine is still a character. Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/161. If you liked this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your reviews help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. Full stop.